Oh, everybody, today's episode was a major mental gut punch for me. I'm going to show you what I found in the interior when I went to change out the carpeting, and I turned the interior from this into this. I'll show you how I did it at home as an amateur. Okay, so let's go. All right, guys, I wanted to show you the starting point here. And then the bench sheets. I've always hated bench sheets. The dash is in good condition. You know, it could have been painted, whatever. These are the brackets that you need. These go, I think, on the outside front portion, and I'll find out when we get there whether, you know, which the back or the front. But these are the brackets because you don't have brackets on the inside because your bench seat only has the bolts on the outside. So this is what you need to weld these into your floor to be able to bolt bucket seats on. So I picked up new carpeting from Summit Racing, $209. I picked up the seats. We're going to get into more into that. These are Pro Car Rally 1000 seats. They don't match exactly. You see the pleating is double, but good enough for government work. All right, so we do have, you know, pleats going front to back. Here we have pleats going front to back. Good enough for me. The first part is going to be to take all this crap out.
I've always said this, the single biggest mistake we make when we're buying a car that we shouldn't is that we fall in love with it. And I'm not necessarily saying buying this car was a mistake, but the point is when we fall in love with a car, you know, the love blinds us to what's really there. I even, going through this first part, thought, oh, it's solid, but it just keeps getting worse.
I think the floors are fundamentally solid.
To sand the floors down, I started out with an air sander, I think with a 36 grit disc. I switched over to the grinder, the right angle grinder, and I put on there a 40 grit sanding flapper wheel, and that seemed to really work the best. And you'll see what I find.
Okay, here's where we stand. I can honestly tell you that this is worse than I thought. Those are holes. And I can honestly tell you that I was only upset for about 8 seconds. There's a hole there, this hole there, so it's thin. It almost looks like, to me, it's rusting from the inside out. Maybe some of this corrosion was trapped under some of this black paint. I think on this side, it looks like, to me, if you can see the seam across the transmission tunnel, I think that side has been replaced. The seam, it overlaps. You can see right here, that is an edge. Then the floor pan goes under the rocker. I think the best thing might be to, I don't know, replace it to the seam there, to the rocker seam here, and about somewhere through there is what I'm thinking I'm going to do. If you look on the passenger side, this sheet metal looks brand new. Back to here. Yeah, so and I believe there's no seam from the factory in the middle. I believe this is one piece somewhere back to here. So this piece has already obviously been replaced, so I think that's probably, I'm just going to decide how far back I go on this side. So whenever you've got this kind of stuff, the water damage, rust, things like that, I think one of the most important things is to figure out where it's coming from. Now, with this case, most of the time I've seen floorboards rust here in Ohio. They rust from the outside in. But this is coming from the inside out. You can see all the rust pitting. This metal has been ground down, but those are rust pits. And this is coming from the inside, and it seems to be coming from this direction. Now, when I look over here, this metal, you know, from the factory, I don't think is even painted or treated because it's not supposed to get wet. And can you see, like back in here, that's got rust on it, so that's clearly getting wet, right? Now, here's something else I found last night. If you look in between the dashboard, right in between this crack there, do you see? That is spray foam. And that definitely should not be there, okay? So that's a real problem. This is bumpy here. So there's rust that'll have to be patched there, okay? So this is getting wet from the inside. So I'm pretty sure it's number one. I know the windshield leaks for a fact because I've been caught in the rain twice and I saw water running down here. So I know there's a hole on the outside of this. I kind of figured that when I bought the car, but I'm just hoping that I can repair it without having to repaint the car. And then I've been reading up, and the second place that I suspect rust is down here at the bottom of the windshield, which would make sense. And I see a little bit of evidence possibly there of, it's hard to get there. I see evidence of rust. So I'm gonna pull this off. I already pulled the windshield wiper arms off, and I'll show you what we've got. So here's what it looks like under that trim. So here's the glass, this lip here. It doesn't look horrible so far, but I think I have to take the windshield out to really find out. I really think it's coming from up here. See these two little lines? I don't know if you guys know this. This is old school stuff. See these two lines in the glass. Do you see them going up? That's the windshield antenna. See, there's no antenna on the car, nothing on the fender, nothing on the quarter panels. This is for the radio, and that is where it plugs in. Kind of cool, huh? So the windshield, I'm gonna pull the windshield out. Windshield's out. It's not nearly as bad actually as I thought. I thought I was gonna get a bunch of rust holes and stuff down here. I'll keep digging and looking. There was a little water damage there, but maybe, you know, a little bit of patch or something there, but I mean, I'll dig it out. It could be worse than I think. That could be some filler or something, but I don't see anything horrible. There's a hole here. It's not very big. But I think the rest of it's pretty solid. I think I might see part of what the problem is. Those are the clips that hold the trim on. I don't know if you can tell, but it's painted body color. This one doesn't look to be. What they should have done is removed all these clips before they painted. There's gonna be a little welded stud there. What that would do, if they removed these when they painted, would be sealing behind this. Otherwise, you know, you could have exposed metal or untreated metal. That could be part of the problem as well. And this is filler. Yuck. Some more glass on this side. There's a hole, and here is that foamy somebody injected in here. I'm sure it was so that they could lay glass on top of the foam. My God. Yeah, this is getting worse. Another hole. And look at this, more Duraglass. These are straight up covered holes with filler. Dang, this is getting bad. And this is getting worse. I took out the seam sealer through here, not horrible. Hole there, okay, but then all that is a big hole, and it was filled with Duraglass and more of that foam crap that they sprayed in there to spread Duraglass over. Unbelievable. This will all need to come out. I'll need to cut, I don't know, about this lip off and up here, right about where that black is, about 3/4 of an inch. I'll have to weld in a piece all the way across. But I have to cut this out first to sand up this lower piece. It's about 8 o'clock Tuesday evening. I think I have my battle plan. The X means areas I'm going to remove, so I think I'm going to go there. The basic philosophy I'm using, there's a few different philosophies. The I have $200,000 to spend philosophy is you replace full panels only. So in other words, this, for example, is a half floor pan patch panel. The actual floor would be the right, the left, everything that goes under the seat to about there. So the, you know, millionaire's philosophy, you know, I have 200 grand to spend on a car philosophy is you replace whole panels only, right? That's not the case. Like this rust here would mean you replace the whole thing. Well, I don't, well, whatever. Yeah, I guess they do make these, but that's just an insane amount of work for something you won't see. So I'm going to butt weld there. And then you see this channel here. I'm just going to create a piece myself. It's got a little bit of an arc from here to here, but it's mostly straight all the way across. And it ends right there, okay? And I think the metal underneath is going to be okay, but when I remove this, I'll double check. So all the way across there. You can see here I have the A-pillar patch panel now, right? So that gives me this area down here at the bottom. So I'm basically going to cut and use however much of that I need under there. And I think I'm going to cut right there on that line so I keep this part. You know, otherwise you got to get all the way under the entire seam. You got to get all the way under this drip rail. I'll just need to make a little piece just for that. Then I believe all this is okay. I will replace this section. And then over here, kind of a similar thing. I do have the other A-pillar, so I'm going to get out of the glare. I'm going to cut out all this and all the way up through here to there. I'm going to keep this piece. See, so I'm going to replace all that, keep that piece, and then replace from here to here. So now I have, the reason for that is because the philosophy I'm using is replace the bad metal, keep the good metal. That's the basic philosophy I'm subscribing to. This keeps the roof character line cutting under here. This decent piece here tells me where the character is. Otherwise, if I replace all this, I have no reference left as to where the windshield actually goes, right?
Now you see me here actually removing the dashboard. The dashboard removal itself is not horribly difficult. There are other videos on YouTube about it. I'll link one in the description below by a young man that was helpful for me. The real trick is it's just not obvious at first where the actual screws are that actually attach to the dashboard. Too much information to include in this video, but you know, like I said, it's a pain in the neck, but it's not really difficult per se, just extremely time consuming.
To show you the close-up, I've already started to rip a lot of this stuff out, but this is expanding foam like you'd use on a house. So there was already rust here. The people that painted this car filled it with expanding foam and then used that expanding foam as something to lay the Bondo over. Unbelievable. I never would have thought to have taken this big of a shortcut, but as you can see, I'm getting the pieces cut out and getting back to good metal. All right, guys, I want to show you something. This little spot, I saw that spot when I purchased the car. That spot right there told me that I was almost certain there was a windshield leak. That to me looks like rust from the inside out. See, it's bubbling out. And there's just no logical reason. There's no chip in the middle of that to cause that. So watch this. Let's see if we can do this. Screwdriver. Huh. Yep, there we go. And there's your rust hole, right? But like I said, never imagined it would, you know, need all this repair. You know, I just figured it was a little tiny thing and I just have to do the corner somehow. But that's what happens when you find a car, fall in love with it, and, you know, you ignore things. But you can see here, see that bubbling? Try and get it in the light. Do you see that? This to me looks like outside in. This to me looks like a poor surface prep. We'll find out. But I don't think water would come from here all the way inside out there. I think that's outside in.
So here's removing the floorboard. I wanted to get all the A-pillar stuff out first, but I'm removing in sections, removing the middle part, then removing the front because I want to be able to roll up, peel up that front piece to be able to grind out those spot welds to remove it from the overlapped spot weld joint at the toe board. And this back piece is where it is spot welded to that brace. You see that brace running up and down, and you see the body mount on the top there, which would be the driver's side rocker panel body mount. So for this job, I decided to pick up a new welder. For about 25 years, I've been using a flux cord wired welder. Basically, that means there's no gas, but it's a guy at the welding shop said it best. He said welding with a flux core welder is like using a crayon, and he said that using a MIG welder with gas is like using a Sharpie marker. It's sloppier, and you can't work as fine work. This is a Lincoln Electric 140 HD Weld-Pak, and it's using Argon CO2 gas, and I got this little cart for $49, 50 bucks at Harbor Freight. Works great.
Welding test. 30 thousandths flux cord wire with the old welder versus 25 thousandths wire using gas with the new welder. I'm not even, I don't even know this welder yet, but these are spot welds using the new welder. They're not bad. Obviously, they're going to need to be ground down. This, first of all, you see it's all ashy and everything, but can you see here? I kept blowing through. And I'd have to go back and repatch it. I can still feel the heat off of this. I could tell welding this was putting in a lot more heat, not just because I could see me blowing through and then having to go back. No matter how slow I was, I could not stop blowing through on with the flux cord. And I didn't blow through once. I didn't burn through once with the gas and the smaller wire. And the other thing was I could feel the heat on the back of my hands. I was not using the full leather gloves. I was just using these, Milwaukee gloves that are kind of like fabric on the back. And my left hand, I had to move my hand away from the heat more because of the heat from the flux cord welder. So there really is a massive difference. And if you figure that's anywhere on the visible side of the car, you know what that's going to do. It's going to warp the piss out of panels. So good investment. Glad I finally dove in and got it. Okay, so where I'm at today, here is the floor pan. This is not a full floor pan. They sell ones that are smaller than this. This is a half floor pan. It goes from the back to the front. It's technically still a patch panel. I bought AMD because everybody online said that AMD is the best. It's nice and thick. This is 18 gauge metal, which is like 0.49 inches, 0.049 inches. Then there's 18 gauge, and I believe the next down would be 20 gauge, which is like 34 or 35 thousand, something like that. A lot of people said good mark, and some of the other ones were thinner and not as accurate, but nice thick stuff. And let's see, you can see the part number, stuff like that. It does wrap around here. Technically, this panel would stop. It would stop further down here. This is what's called the toe board. So where I have the panel separated here right now, where I have the panel separated is the factory, obviously the factory seam. So you see that seam is on the flat part. It's overlapped and spot welded, and I think that factory seam would be right here. So it goes forward and it gives you more to be able to patch. It goes halfway over the transmission tunnel, and you can see the other side was done years before, where the factory, this is all one piece of metal. So I think I'm thinking I'm going to go ahead and mate up to that seam right there, just so I don't have this little thin strip and two welds. So I'm going to start laying it in here and kind of see what we got.
Now what I'm doing here is prepping the floor, so the parts that are going to get covered up by being welded, like that backside of that cross brace, is not treated at all from the factory. I'm painting it. This is a special primer. It's called Weld Through Primer. Weld Through Primer. I am grinding off the areas that are going to get welded, including the places where there will be spot welds. If you notice the bottom side, that's going to contact that cross brace. I'm using 60 grit here, sanding wheel flap, and then also because again bare steel, I'm covering that, covering it with Weld Through Primer. Weld Through Primer is electrically conductive. You can't use regular primer instead. Now this part is actually drilling little holes because you need to make spot welds, but I don't have a spot welder, so I'm drilling holes where the panel is going to get spot welded to the brace, and then you fill them, and that's what you call a plug weld. So that's how at home without a spot welder you can basically replicate spot welds, which you see me now tacking and welding the whole thing in.
So I just want to update you, show you how I'm doing here. So this technique I'm using, I learned, is called cut and butt. Cut and butt. Basically what you're doing is, like here you see the metal is overlaid, but after you lay it on, you cut it. You may have seen me doing that in the high-speed video. Kind of like, this at a little bit of an angle, like a 30, maybe 45 degree angle. And then that lets this layer drop down and you weld it even, right? So of course these welds are going to be ground down. But right here, the problem I'm having here is this feature is just too tall relative to my car. So I have to cut a relief slot. I can't, because there's too much metal there. I can't just shrink it on the car. So I cut a relief slot and I'm gonna bend it down. Then I'll get this to touch to this. And then that gap, see I cut a V there, and then gap will close up when I hammer it down. See, watch actually. So I'll screw it down to pull that down so I can weld it in place, and I'll zip that shut. And there it is, welded up. I know it's not the neatest, that'll all get ground down, but we're getting there. See, now it's all level.
So let me talk you through what I'm doing here, and this is in real time. And again, a lot of what I've learned I got from Fitzy's Fabrications, as I put earlier. This technique I'm going to put in the description below, the exact video that I learned this from. This is from a guy, Bad Chad. Bad Chad is the channel, and the actual video name is How to MIG Weld Sheet Metal Without Warping, Real-Time Demonstration, again linked below. But you'll notice what I'm doing, it's not as critical because this is a floor. You know, if you warp a floor, you'll never see it. But what I'm doing is a series of 4. Sometimes I get a little greedier and go longer. Again, only because it's a floor, it's not the outside. But you see I'm doing different spots and then going generally like about, 4 spot welds in a row is what he says you can do on an outer panel without warping. But again, watch his video. It's really amazing. He's really pretty blunt and very honest, I believe. Great stuff. But as you can see, it's working out pretty well. So this is just a matter of stitching in little sections, and you move around the panel to eliminate the heat. This is a very large panel attaching to a very large panel, so you don't have as much problem with heat as, let's say, if you're welding on a little dog leg to the bottom of a fender or something like that. So I'll speed up this next part and you'll get to see the result.
You guys see I got greedy there and I burned a hole, so I tried to do too much. Now it doesn't matter on a floorboard, but on the A-pillar, that'll be a problem.
Now you're going to see me use a little bit different technique here. Ideally, you want a small gap, somewhere between the thickness of the welding wire up to less than a 1/16 of an inch. I think ideal is like 40 thousandths gap, but I'm doing longer. You see, about a 3/8 inch long weld. This is where you have the metal butt welded and it's completely touching. In those areas, I found that you can put in more heat, and when you do that, you're going to get more penetration, because what you don't want is when it's absolutely butt welded together with no gap, and then you just do little spot welds on top. You may not get enough penetration, so that when you grind the top off, you're left with almost no weld.
Here's the welds I just did. I just noticed I missed a spot, and literally just finished welding like 30 seconds ago, and in a good touch area. It's not like, even down here where I just did, I can touch it, so there's not a ton of heat going into it. That's good. Some of those welds, like those are really good. Like there, it's grapey, it's sticking up, but that'll all get ground down. So I think I've got pretty good penetration without too much heat. So I got to keep going. I screwed up there, that cut. I cut into the panel I shouldn't have. So I'll have to be careful around there, but I'll show you the result. I'll keep going. So here's what the raw unfinished welds look like. This is underneath the car. That's the engine. That's the rear axle. So here is the back edge. And I would say, see, like this is the cut and butt or a piece of the metal. You see it's still hanging in there, so I got to get that out. That's one of the disadvantages of the cut and butt. There's where I had a hole. You see this little piece of welding wire right here that's kind of sticking out. I'll sand that off. This I'm pretty happy with. But there you can see, I mean, it's not perfect, so it's not just paint ready. So that's pretty good for my abilities. Up in here, I mean, there's really no other choice. You know, on that edge, see, can you see up in there where the weld is, the butt weld? That's pretty good. Not so good back here. Some of it burned through. You know, it's all right. Not great, not bad. Not professional, but I'll take it. Once I sand that down, the flap wheel or grinding disc, just hit it a little bit, and you know, put a little undercoating on it, I think it'll disappear. So here's where I'm at. This piece was here. I cut it out because you can see here the metal split. The reason for that is I didn't get a good fit, so I had to, because I didn't have a good fit, I burned through, so I had to glob on weld there. And after I globbed on weld, I hammered to try to get the metal back to shape, and it was a little bit rusty there, so it was weak and it split. The reason I didn't just replace this whole section originally is the replacement panel didn't have that little raised pad. That's right where your heel would rest when you drive the car. I have no idea whether that would make it uncomfortable not having it, but that was my original decision, is to keep that hump. So what I did was I took another piece of metal where there was already a raised form from somewhere else on the panel, this fresh panel, and I'm butt welding that in, and I'm using the cut and butt technique. And you can see here, I overlapped it just a little bit. Then after I lay it on, I'm cutting it away. Like you can see on this top part here, there's still panel underneath. You can only do this when you can get to the bottom side after you've welded though. So just follow along. I'm getting better at welding. I'm getting better at fitting. So you can see here, I've got this toggle clamp that's holding them parallel. The gap is a little larger than I'd like over here. The gap is ideal here, but I can weld that shut. I'm gonna go left to right, like probably 2 spots. So that little toggle just falls through and you can pull that out. Now I gotta close that gap over there. Here is the cut and butt. This is the cutting part. The panels are overlapped and the back half is very close to the transmission tunnel. So I'm cutting it, I'm cutting the lower panel away even with the upper. And again, the same thing here at the front. You can see the panels are overlapped. You cut through the lower panel, even with the upper panel, and it just leaves a tiny gap. And this is using a 40 thousandths thick cutoff tool blade. If you angle it, you'll wind up with a gap a little bit less than that. So there it is, welded in. Some areas I'm pretty happy with, where the welding was fairly flat. Like it's nice there. It's really nice there. That's too much on top. And like I said, I'm learning. It's not bad down here. I see a little spot I missed. I'm gonna grind them down though, you know, fill a little more. There's a pinhole there. Hit a couple of those pinholes and then grind it down and see what we're left with. Okay, I think the floor is done. Drill out a hole from the bottom and then drill it out larger from the top. That's, I don't know what that is. It's a seat bracket hole or something. That's not terrible. I mean, the result is pretty decent. The process wasn't pretty, you know. But I'm pretty happy with it. So I'm going to put down some self-etching primer next. Well, in doing some of the sanding, finished all this stuff up over here, I started to find some surface rust, so I kind of did the rest of it. You can still see there is some surface rust in the pitting. You can only do so much, you know. So I'm going to treat that with the phosphoric acid, but I found a thin spot. By the time I got past all the rusty stuff, I opened it up with a die grinder, air grinder. I used this flame bit, and that's the good metal, so I'm going to patch that up. And I have a little patch made there. I'm going to butt weld it in. I thought I was ready to go, and I saw a little pinhole. Like, I thought it was just a spot weld, but when it was right below the little square hole, so when I stuck the grinder on it, went through. That's the brace. You can see these spot welds. That's that brace that runs across. So I went back a little bit beyond the brace, and just joined the two holes into one larger hole. So I'm going to make a new patch. Okay, I've got my little patch made. Tack it in place. Fudge and stick, stupid. You guys see I got greedy there and blew a hole. It's always going to be the parent metal that blows through because it's always going to be the thinnest.
This is before I applied the PPG Chemfill DX579 phosphoric acid treatment. You got to follow the directions. You got to mix it 2 parts distilled water to 1 part acid. You see it in the blue there, and it says in a plastic container. It says to apply it, wait a few minutes, and you can see how here it changes the color of the metal. Not only does it change the color of the rust, the pitted stuff inside the rust pits to black, it also changes the clean metal to kind of like this, this funky, you see the color there, this yellowish, like almost aluminum looking color. And you can see the solution changed color as well. You scrub it, wait a couple minutes, scrub it. It says with a synthetic, I used a Scotch-Brite pad, hit it again, and then wipe the stuff off. It says clean it with distilled water, so I tried to follow the directions pretty exact.
And you can clearly see it changes the color not only of the rust, but the base metal. I think what it does is it changes iron to iron phosphate, I believe. When I say the metalletcha, this is the product I'm using. This is really old. I don't know if they're still under the same number, but it is PPG Chemfill Metal Cleaner DX579. And here's what it looks like after I hit it a second time and then scrubbed it. And I see the rust changed to a different color. And I'm sure it's not perfect, but like I said, all you can do is all you can do, you know?
Now here is painting over this area. I'm painting over with a product called POR 15. POR stands for paint over rust. You can see the can, the orange can there. Very popular, very well regarded in the industry. This product is designed to go straight over the bare metal. Basically, it goes on like liquid tar, but it winds up drying almost like as I feel like this hard ceramic finish. I think that's what was on there before. The idea is you're going to encapsulate any rust and hopefully prevent it from coming back.
And here's the finished result. I put 2 coats on per the directions on the can. I did wait an entire day. It's been in the 50s, only high of about 60s. When I'm doing this, it took a while. The can says 2 to 6 hours to dry. So, 1 coat one day, next coat another day. What do you think, huh? Right, there's that toe board area I had to weld in a second time. Not bad, huh? I mean, a lot of this area here, you can't tell that I welded it at all. I've not treated the outside. I will do that. I'll show you that next time, but here's the whole back seat area. And it's hard to tell where that little patch was, right? So the project is coming along. This is all solidified. I'm going to show you what I need to do next. Next is taking care of this. I've got a bunch of panels made up here, A-pillar. There's a whole full A-pillar around here somewhere. There's a lot of work to do, including that stuff down here. I have the hood off the car. The hood is over there, and we got a whole garage full of parts. By the way, the axle is out. I picked up a Chevy 12-bolt. And on the other side, the fender is about ready to come off so that I can get access down to here, and all that stuff. The fender is basically unbolted, but I'm going to see if I can show it here. This is pretty horrible. So I'm looking between the door and the fender here. That is what they call the lower cowl panel, and I'm going to try to get it in the camera here. Can you guys see it there? That is a rust hole. That hole is about the size of the palm of my hand, so. More rust. So, but I will persist. Thank you guys so much for following along. Please feel free to subscribe, and please hit that little like button if you did like this. Come back again and give me a week or two and you'll see another major update on this. All right, God bless. Thank you. Goodbye.